Welcome to episode 26. Check out what you can expect this week.
I can't do it. Hey, that's what I love about spring.
He's trying very hard to transition to our topic.
You do things with other people. Like that's reality. At least some of us.
I thought I was doing this podcast alone.
No. Well, I'm a robot, so
Finally, I built a robot.
No, exactly. I'm from Tesla. All of us were obviously thinking.
Yeah,
Tesla,
TPR.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad you shared. Yeah, everybody listening to the podcast
100%.
was like, "Oh, yeah, I remember that."
We are Will and Josh. We are also back. It is the High Tech Podcast. You here?
We're here. Yeah, wow. Did we just say we're here at the same time?
I said, are you here?
Oh, I said we're here.
But we
Okay,
did
so
say
we're
it at the same time.
We covered all bases, though. We made sure you knew we were here, and you wanted to know they were here.
Am I here?
Yeah, I mean, you're here. I'm not really sure why you asked them if they're here, because they're listening. They can't answer us.
Oh. Well, they should.
They're
In
actually
fact,
genuinely not here.
they should go to Twitter and follow us at
Wait, we
High
have a
Tech
Twitter?
Podcast. Have you not followed us yet?
No, I followed us.
Yeah, I was about to say, you better know.
That's
it.
literally all I do on Twitter anymore. I didn't interact
Every
on
Tuesday.
Twitter before this. It's basically I log in on Tuesdays. I go to look at the thing that you post because Will manages our Twitter. Because if I did, that would be atrocious. And then I like your post or our post,
Yep,
and then
yep,
I retweet it as if like I have personally a ton of followers.
Maybe
that are gonna
you
do
should take over Twitter. Maybe it would
No,
be good
that's
for
a
you.
horrible idea. I don't want to. I really don't.
Oh, all right, that's fine. I'm good with it.
You do it. You got it. I'll continue making the images that you do, and you do you.
That's the team, folks. He does the website. He does the images. He does some design and stuff. I do the audio editing and the Twitter posts. And specifically, make sure to use Ted Lasso GIFs in my replies to things.
You've been
That's
using
it.
it quite
That's it.
often now.
That's
which
how we
is
do
good.
this.
So, welcome to the High Tech Podcast, folks, where we bore you for the first 5 seconds with our internal breakdown of how we do the podcast. I know you were all incredibly worried about that.
And we'll move you
it's an enigma.
right into the most amazing, exciting, exacerbating question we've ever asked. How do you eat string cheese?
That is the question that is on the mind of every average American.
See, on Friday
how
this past
do you eat
week,
string cheese?
we were referring to this for whatever reason
I don't
at
remember why I came up.
Josh's wife's birthday
Oh,
party.
it had to do with the game. We were playing What Do You Mean?
Oh,
right?
that's right. Yep.
And one of the things was about somebody getting angry, right? And the reason they got angry, okay, let's just explain the card first, okay?
Fair.
So if you've never played this game, it's like Apples to Apples. If you've never played Apples to Apples, you've probably been living in a cave this entire time, and I don't care.
Which means you don't follow our Twitter, and you should
which
definitely go there and follow our
which
Twitter.
makes me more question how the heck you found our podcast. But okay, it's basically you got a meme and you gotta like put down a card. It's a phrase of some sort, and then that person reads that phrase with the meme. Okay, and then they pick which they think is the funniest. Okay, and this one was an angry meme. And so actually, I think I played this card. I think I was the one who played the card, which is basically like, imagine you get angry when you see somebody take a stick of string cheese and just take a big bite out of it.
Exactly. Like a normal human being might do.
No, not like a normal human being.
Yep.
See, we're already
See.
giving this away of what our answers are. So let me answer first.
Okay.
Okay?
What's
Because
the wrong way, Josh?
the wrong way is the way that Will eats it.
Uh-huh.
Okay? That's the easiest answer to that question. The right way is when you get a thing of string cheese, okay, you open a little plastic thing, right? Because it's usually always wrapped in like this weird plastic container.
That's
that
obnoxious to
makes
open, right? It's
feels
already
gross.
frustrating
Right?
me
Yeah,
just
it's already-
holding
okay?
it.
And then what do? You grab a little piece of cheese and you pull the string off and you eat that string, okay? That's what you do because it's called string cheese.
I'm sorry, dude. It's not celery, okay? Like celery is like a negative
What?
calorie. Like it
No.
takes energy to eat
What
celery.
do you mean? It's not
I
like
don't
celery?
want-
Celery is not called string celery. You're right. It's not like celery. You take a solid bite out of celery and
Celery
that's what you
is-
do with celery.
Celery is very fibrous. It does come apart in strings. No, I'm just saying, right? When I eat a thing of string cheese correctly, I open it, I take a bite out of it, and I enjoy it, right? I don't work. I don't cause myself
do you
more
enjoy
effort.
it though?
I
Do you
do.
enjoy it?
Oh, specifically
Because I
Polio.
feel like
Polio is the best brand in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, I don't pay attention to my string cheese brands. I'll just be honest.
Yeah.
Because I'm too busy turning them into strings like they were meant to be.
Yeah.
Okay, now I have a more important question. Do you pull off strings of celery when you eat celery? Is that what I'm learning in this thing?
I mean, if you got to, you need some floss or something. It's just right there on the
So
spot.
you don't do that,
You
right?
get yourself
Because
a
if
Bloody
I
Mary. You've got
swear,
some floss.
If you
it's perfect.
eat celery with strings and you don't eat string cheese as strings, you just immediately become wrong. There's no easy answer to that.
I eat my celery like I eat my string cheese. I eat my string cheese correctly.
Okay.
One bite at a time. No pulling apart. No extra labor and effort. What is this?
It's not labor. They designed the cheese. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. This is a horrible question. For those of you listening to us, make sure to go to at High Tech Podcast on Twitter and let us know on the thread for this episode if you eat string cheese like a normal human being with strings. You pull off all the pieces of strings, or you eat it like an animal and you bite the whole thing apart. Okay.
Hey, I'm efficient.
I'm whatever. It's not
Did you hear
always
that?
about
Efficient.
It's not always about
Efficient.
efficiency.
I'm an animal. Efficient.
A fish. Oh, I get it. Okay. See, people, those are the type of people that just eat string cheese by biting it. They make jokes about efficient. I don't care if it's efficient. Okay.
I'm in rare form today. I don't know what.
It's
I'm
a
just
system.
like,
Okay.
Let's go.
You pull off all the different pieces. All these different pieces of cheese come together to make one string cheese. You pull it apart. That's what it was meant to do. Will. It's kind of. I can't do it. It's that's what I love about spring cheese.
He's trying. He's trying very
I'm trying,
hard to transition
I'm trying to be
our
you,
topic.
and I can't do it. I can't.
But he can't do it with a straight face. You guys can't see what he's doing on screen and how red his face is right
Yes,
now. But
I'm losing it. I
I'm
can't
sorry.
Do it.
You were trying to do what? Eat string cheese incorrectly?
Yeah. Well, no, I was trying to eat string cheese, and I was pulling apart all the pieces because all those pieces come together to make a beautiful snack.
That's right.
And
you need all the pieces to accomplish that.
It's true, you do. You could kind of say that all little strings of cheese collaborate
To become one big cheese?
to become one big cheese that you pull the strings apart to eat. Obviously, our conversation, though, is not about string cheese today. It is about this term that we've used, right? Collaborative learning. Okay? Now, for those of you listening, collaborative learning is not only a way to learn, it's also a basically hot button words that everybody throws around that they don't really know what it means. So we wanted to talk about how do you collaboratively learn? How do you incorporate collaborative learning? Now, this is the first time we've addressed this type of topic because we've talked about collaborative documents, we've talked about whiteboards. The more I start to think about it, most ed tech tools are mostly collaborative tools.
Or they try
so
to
we
be.
talk about they try to be. So we talk about collaborative learning, but I want to talk about how do we actually incorporate that into our classes, into maybe the online course you're teaching or designing or working on, whatever background you're coming from. How can you incorporate collaborative learning? Now, I obviously have great answers, but I prefer to go to Will first.
Ugh.
Okay? Because Will may eat string cheese like a heathen, but he usually has some pretty solid answers for
Wow.
this stuff. So
Wow. That's where that went. Well done.
that's where that went. So Will, we have a couple different things we would talk about. First of all, let's talk about how do you define collaborative learning? Let's talk about that for a second, because I feel like we just need to make sure we get that right before we start moving.
I would cast collaborative learning as the umbrella term for a lot of different group work or student-to-student experiences, right? Some folks might think that collaborative learning is just a group project or writing a paper together. It is not just that. Collaborative learning, of course, could just be two students doing a conversation with one another about the topic of the day. Collaborative learning could even be with the instructor. There could be something where the instructor is doing a lab, right? And he or she is doing work with the students actively. That's collaborative, right? It's more than one person working on something together. Now, within collaborative learning, of course, are things like group projects, classroom modeling activities or classroom engagement activities. There's tons of stuff that you can put under collaborative learning. But we wanted to make sure that we kind of start saying it's pretty broad, because even while Josh and I were like talking about show notes and stuff like that, I started going down one rabbit hole, and he's like, "But doesn't it also include this?" I was like, "Yeah, you're right." We've got the idea here that if you're having the students work together, they're seeing each other's work, they are reviewing each other's work. They could even be the subject of one another's work, right? Doing interviews or something like that. That's collaborative. They're working together to get the task done.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I think like the train we started going down that I tried to propose that there were other ideas into there, right? And I'm speaking to myself just as much, is that anytime we throw around the idea of collaborative learning, both instructors and students, I think immediately go to, okay, cool, group projects, which are all of students' favorites types of projects, are group projects, right? But I think it's more than that, right? It includes, you and I were throwing around ideas, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but like think, pair, share, this idea of not just like group projects, but I mean like peer review type of things, feedback that students can work on together. There's a lot of ways that students can collaborate, and even collaborative learning in of itself is not just a project type, but it's a whole philosophy of how you go about learning.
That's a good way to put it.
That it's not just this person on the stage telling people things and they write papers and stuff, but that everybody has something to contribute to the learning experience, right? And that sounds really wishy-washy and fantastic, but sometimes I think we get that way about it. But there is a reality to this, that in the world that we live in, you do things with other people. Like that's reality. Like at least some of us.
I thought I was doing this podcast alone.
No, well, I'm a robot, so there's that.
Finally, I built a robot.
No, exactly. I'm from Tesla. Not
a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. But so I think that's how we look at collaborative learning. Like this idea of bringing students together. It can be group projects. It can be they're just simply working out a concept together. You're having them discuss something that you had in class. In an online space, it can be that they're discussing with each other. They're working on something together. They're giving each other feedback. I mean, there's a lot of different ways collaborative learning plays out. Now, to move on, though, why do we do this, right? So let's talk about that for a second, because I think we like to throw around these ideas, but I think sometimes I get a lot of the instructors who are like, okay, sure, that's just what educators like to do.
You folks researching in the corner, go away.
Yeah, you go away. I'm going to go back to what I've been doing, right? So, like, why do we do it? Now, I think something that was helpful for me that you threw out when we were talking about this is this idea of, like, this authentic engagement about it, right? I think there's some authenticity to it. There we go. I got the word out. In the fact that, like I mentioned, when your students get out of your class, they're going to have to work with other people. Like, and concepts don't come together in a bubble. Like, there's community. We work together. And I think we learn better together in multiple areas. Like, because each person has experience, has knowledge that they come to the table with. It may not be all about the topic that you're learning in the classroom, but it's this understanding, this perspective that they come from, that it can help build a richer experience. And so I think that is part of the reason we bring it together. Now, you were the one who threw out those two words, so I'm curious, like, when you're thinking of, you threw out this idea of authentic and engaging as part of the reason we do this. Talk a little bit about why you threw that out.
Well, one of the things that I think is important to this is, so much that happens in the classroom is in a sanitary spot. Like the classroom is four walls.
Yeah, we do a lot of cleaning.
Or we're all trying to be janitors. Even the online classroom is limited to the learning management system, right? So whatever your classroom is, there's a structure to it, and it's not the real world necessarily. I'm not saying that like there's a lot of I think hype that gets put behind that idea that like learning isn't real. That's not true. The classroom is valuable. There's a reason we practice there, because it's safe, it's helpful, it can be controllable. But if you've ever seen people work in a kitchen, for instance, the entire night is collaboration. If you've ever seen somebody put on an event, the entire event is a collaborative effort. If you create a digital marketing campaign, right, it's collaborative. And so what's, I think, authentic about making sure you have collaborative learning in your classroom or your online experience is that it's going to happen in the real world, like Josh is saying, but we want to make sure we're trying to cultivate that in the learning experiences themselves. If you have the students write a research paper about digital ad campaigns, that's okay. I'm okay with that, but I would still really like to see you assign them the activity of making a digital ad campaign. Like, that would be an authentic thing, and they would get to collaborate together working on that project. I know my work, Josh's work, like, we constantly collaborate. We can't do something without another team member or without a faculty member, a subject matter expert, right? Like, this is all going to be, I think, collaborative. So making our classrooms that way is just authentic to the real world. But altogether, I think it's a lot more engaging. It's fun, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a nerd. If you've never picked that up.
You mean two people podcasting about educational technology are nerds? That's
surprise. Right?
Unacceptable. We're definitely not that way.
I would like to write a research paper on digital ad marketing and digital ad campaigns. I'm okay. I would do that, but it would also be a lot more fun to like do the campaign and see the results of it. See how impressions work, see what it's like to share social media posts, see if you can make something go viral, right? That's a fun challenge, and it's authentic to that experience. Now, the examples we use tonight, from kitchens to events to marketing, they're not, going to work across every example, but I do hope you can kind of pull from that the idea that it might work for what you're doing. Engineering, biology, ballroom dance. I think there's a space to think about it in this way.
Yeah. Well, and it, like, to your point, like, it's, you fit into even some of the more traditional spaces of like literature and stuff that's very writing heavy, where like the reality is the writing of the paper is actually a live version of what you'd be doing once you get out of this, right? There's still a ton of collaboration that happens there. Like, writing does not happen in a bubble. People review, they give feedback. Sometimes you're collaboratively writing on things. And so you use those examples to get this shared experience and give students practice doing these types of things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a double benefit to that. Like, when you're doing like a peer review type of idea, it's not just because you want students to review each other and you don't want to do the reviewing and you can lean off of the work that they did. I hope not. And it's because you want the students to both get practice getting feedback from peers and also giving feedback, like evaluating work. Carefully processing it. Sometimes the joke always goes around that you learn something better after you've taught it a few times. Mm-hmm. Like, there's because you've had to get more in depth with what you're dealing with. And so, like, there's another example of like a collaborative type of learning experience that works. And then even down to like short form type of stuff, like actually having students share and talk about ideas, right? Like, even from a practical way of you breaking down whether it's a discussion online that they're discussing through, or giving feedback, or collaborative annotation like we talked about, or actual live discussion in class. Like, you can ask a question to all 50 of your students, or 20, and if you just ask that question, there's going to be a handful of them that respond. If you ask that question or give a new idea, but then break them out into 2 or 3 groups, like into one other student meeting with them, they're forced to talk through these ideas and also get perspectives of other students and what they're thinking. And that student can share something that maybe they weren't thinking about on this concept, and they can share something that sparks conversation. And in shorter amount of time, you're able to dig deeper into a concept, get students to think about it more, and then come back together and actually develop more ideas off of that and guide more of the conversation. And so that's where I think the shared experience coming in together is advantageous. So if by the end of that conversation you don't want to do collaborative learning, shame on you. Now, I don't think it all has to be collaborative learning. I just want to give that one statement before we go to this next thing. That I know a lot of my educator friends who are all about collaborative learning, and they like never do other things. It's always like group thing. They're always this thing.
If you're not moving, you're not learning. It's like,
you're not moving if you're not learning. It's like, whoa, that's a lot of activity. Even online, I've seen a lot of people who design courses online that's just like tons of group collaborative discussion and work, and it's like, holy crap. Stop for a second. Let them actually read. Let them process.
Debrief.
Debrief. Don't overload. One of the dangers of collaborative learning is that you can make it too busy, and kind of give this fake sense of learning. So there's my caveat to our excited thing. So maybe if you don't want to do all collaborative learning, you're not completely crazy.
Trivia, factoid, random note that this comes out of my brain. As soon as you started down that, I was like, well, that actually makes me think of the total physical response method. methodology out of the 60s and 70s that said you literally needed to move. Like moving was a part of learning, and now I went down that rabbit hole for myself. But like that's not true.
All of us were obviously thinking.
TPR.
So I'm glad you shared. Yeah, everybody listening to the podcast 100%. Was like, oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
and I
every
was
scene
like,
circles.
That's 60s
there's lots
to 70s
of learning method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So okay.
How do we get started, Josh?
How do we get started?
What do we do
here?
here?
That's a great question. What do we do? So the first thing we asked here when we get started, because I can see, and I've done this a lot of times, we jump into a couple of our basic guidelines. But one of the things I want to encourage you is first take a step back, and before you're going to get started, actually take some time to carefully think about, okay, where does this fit?
Yeah.
Right? So where does this fit into my classroom, into my course? Maybe you're designing a course, you're building an online course, where does this fit? And I think we were talking about this. There's kind of this vague concepts of how we deal with it, I think. I wish I could give you like the top 3 things to look for to put them in, but that would be absurd. And so
there's too many.
I think way too many. And so I think really for me, and feel free to give some ideas, Will, into here too, is I think I'm looking for places, okay, where can I have students lean off of each other to wrestle through concepts, to push each other to more critical thinking, right, on a concept, not just to like surface value think, but actually use them to push each other into better thinking on a concept and develop a concept better. And I'm also looking for spaces where, okay, where can they build a better end, I don't want to say product, but better end, I guess, visual things that they can come together. Where can working together produce something better or get them closer to a real world example of what they're going to be doing? Those are kind of some of the areas I guess I'm looking for when I'm thinking of how do I fit in collaborative learning.
And I think I might break it up into 2, like a step 1, step 2. This is coming to me. Coming to
You're writing
live
things as we're talking. I don't like doing this. No, I'm just joking.
Josh likes to have our notes, and I'm just like, let's go off book.
I like to be structured.
I think that there's something to be said for what you have to teach your students. There's content like facts, historical content, theories, structures, processes. Like there's some very
terms.
Yeah, there's very factual information that is worth you telling them or teaching them so that they can work to remember it. But let's just say something to the effect of classical conditioning. Was it Skinner? It's not Skinner. Whatever. Classical conditioning.
Yeah, sure. Whoever knows that, reply to us on Twitter at High Tech Podcast.
Embarrass me for forgetting the name on the spot,
please let
of course.
us know.
But classical conditioning. So you need to tell the students that is a thing. You need to tell them about the dogs and the bell and how it all came about.
Pavlov.
Thank you.
Nailed it. Okay, ignore my last Twitter comment. We got it.
Yeah, you can still tweet us, but it should say something like, would you like to be our sponsor? No. You need to necessarily tell them those facts, but then what are the students going to do with that fact? That's an opportunity to say, maybe they should do something collaborative, right? So you provide them the content, the concept, and then tell them, go use this, go make this functional, make something that makes sense of it. And a very famous, I mean, it's not famous, but it comes to mind out of my experience, and it just is so perfect on this very subject. My community college psych professor taught her students about classical conditioning, and in the practice of teaching them that, they decided as a class to secretly test her using it, so that when she was in class over the next couple of weeks, when they were listening to her, they would look at her and in mass and whatever, and when they were not listening to her, they would look away from her. But that was like the kind of the test itself. What they wanted to do was they wanted to make her feel like she needed to move a certain way based on them listening or not listening. So if she moved closer to the door of the room, they would not listen to her. They would not pay attention. When she walked closer to the whiteboard, they would pay attention, do this other stuff, or the other way around maybe. They used this actively on her in secret to move her all the way to the door of the classroom, and she didn't even notice. Until she got to the door. Like, finally, one week, she's like, why the heck am I standing at the door? And the classroom laughed and, let her in on the secret, right? But that's the power of collaborative learning, of the secret that the students can tap into. She taught them the facts, but they decided to do something with it. And
Yeah.
I don't, it doesn't need to be a prank on the professor, but that's the thing I think could be a lesson here for when we should apply collaborative learning. What do you want? You want the students to do something or learn more about something that you're teaching them. Give them an activity to engender it.
Wow. All right. I like that. I'll go with that. Give it an activity to engender it. Collaborative learning could fit in there. Remember that, people. That's a great. That's a great fact. Factoid. And don't use conditional learning on your instructor. I feel like that's a little sketchy.
I loved it. I loved it.
I mean,
I don't know the ethics.
I'm sure. I don't know the ethics, but I kind of feel like that was a little, Okay. On that note, let's talk about further getting started. Okay, so let's say you've identified where you wanna go with it. Let's say you've identified what you want them to do. You've identified maybe you've taught them something. You want them to dig deeper onto a concept. You want them to pull in some collaborative learning. How do you get them doing it, right? So how do you get started on them doing it? So I'll let you go with this first one because this was your first kind of your thought.
Just demonstrate it or model it, but give them an example. I mean, it's that simple. I'm gonna wax eloquent, of course, and give you 5 paragraphs to describe it when 2 words got the idea. But no, the point being, like, if you want them to try some digital ad campaigns, or you want them to take on roles in writing a paper, or if you want them to do Think, Pair, Share, even just go on YouTube and Google that and put the 30-second video on screen so they have an idea of what it is you want them to accomplish. When you, as the teacher, say to the class, I want you to turn to your neighbor and discuss this, what is the expectation for that? You know, as a teacher, when you start to get frustrated after you've sent them off on that activity, when you start to hear stuff about their weekends, when you start to hear stuff that's just like wrong, when you see a couple that's not talking, right? Like, that starts to frustrate you. But what does it even really feel like or look like to see the successful ones? Like the ones that are engaging in the topic and are going into detail. That's what you want to be imagining, envisioning, and tell them that's what you want them to accomplish. Give them that example. Because otherwise, there's nothing wrong with them going off topic. You didn't tell them they couldn't.
Yeah. Give them the picture you want them to get to, right? Help them see that vision of what this group, it sounds overly big thinking and obnoxious, but like you want them to be able to know what they're aiming for. Right. Think of all the bad group discussions and projects you've had. They mostly come because, like, I just had one recently. Okay, I'm not going to say it because it involves my institution. But I had one that was like, the question was just poorly put together, and there was not a lot of guidance on what we were trying to come up with. Like, it was like, what's this dream thing? And we were trying to figure it out, and it was just not ideal. And we got some weird stuff on the board. I'm gonna be honest. And people got a little distracted and didn't come up with a lot of stuff because it just wasn't clear. Now, one of the other things you can help do clear beyond just demonstrating and modeling it is something I call providing bumpers. Okay, and so there's a little story that goes along with this. Okay, my lowest grade in college, okay, was a class by the name of bowling and tennis. Okay, it is 100% my lowest grade. I did fantastic in all my other courses. I did horrible in a class called bowling and tennis, mainly because I took a class called bowling and tennis. But okay, in bowling, I was horrible. I would throw the ball and it would go flying around and bounce around and usually end up in the gutter or somewhere else. Or I once jumped lanes. Okay, and we bust on them. But bumpers are a beautiful invention in bowling. Why? Because it stops idiots like me from going into other lanes and ending up in the gutter. Okay? And so I joke about this, but the reality is when you do group work, when you do collaborative work, whether it's a big project that they're working on, they're coming up with a marketing campaign, they're pulling together maybe a blog together, they're, whatever that may be, they're sitting down to discuss something in class, you have them in a discussion. You need to give them guidelines for what they're going to be doing. You need to give them the lane of what they're going to be working in. You've got to make sure that they understand the parameters of that discussion, or else that's where stuff gets off kilter. That's where you get weird projects at the end because it wasn't clear. And so you're demonstrating and modeling, but you're giving them clear guidelines along the way of what is it that I want from you? What is it that how do I want you to interact with each other? We've talked about this before in our online discussions episodes, where like you need to give clarity on how they're to discuss. What are some of the guidelines? This is one of the reasons I love, this is not the tool for the episode. We'll bring it back because we've talked about it twice, and because there's an interview coming up from it, right? We haven't released this yet. The Parlay is a great tool. One of the things I love about Parlay's discussion tool is that they give kind of almost bumpers and guidelines for discussions. They think about the big premise of a roundtable discussion, and the tool works with the pedagogy to give the guidelines and the parameters for the students so they know how to do the discussion well, right? So like you need to lay that out as an instructor. The places that I see most of these go awry is when instructors don't lay that out, because if they don't, metaphorically, the ball goes in the other lane. Okay, so place some bumpers. Okay.
In following though with the metaphorical structures this evening, loving this. I'm like just in metaphor heaven right now. I want to leave you with the last thought to get started as marking the exits. Right? At the same level that you provide bumpers, provide the guidelines, there's a space for collaborative learning. There's certain peoples who are not comfortable with it or have issues or schedules can be. Mark the exit. Let the students know that they don't have to. There should be an option. If a student's uncomfortable working in group projects, or they can't get on, got a commuter in a class full of residential students, they can't get their schedule, make sure they have the space to try a different way or to do it solo or something else, right? We just went through and are going through the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So people have learned to work virtually. Don't make them do it in class. Let them do it out of class on their own time through Zoom or something like that. There's lots of ways you can just start to make this work easier to accomplish, and let the students know that they don't have to do it exactly as you prescribe.
Yeah.
I think that really strikes a tune with me. I don't know about you, but it's bringing a really clear note to me, and I just don't want that to fall flat. I don't know about you, but I'd really like to make sure that this resonates with our audience.
See, this is why you do the transitions. Yeah, that was much better.
You like that?
That was much better. Yeah, it was good.
And why did I say that though, Josh?
Because our tool for today is not Parlay, because we've already talked about that. Go check out that episode if you haven't listened to it.
We love Parlay.
We love Parlay. It is a tool called Flat. Okay, which actually, now that I'm thinking about this, is kind of a bad name for a music tool. But it is a collaborative, I guess, composition tool is probably the way I would define it, right?
You're the one that plays music. I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm a drummer. We don't
fair.
write out this stuff. So like, I mean, we do, but I didn't. I was in a punk band. Yeah, so it's like a composition kind of collaborative writing, writing music tool essentially. Like, okay, this is a little bit of a niche tool.
Yep.
For us here.
Sorry, literature folks. I'm not sure you're gonna like this one today.
Yeah, you're not gonna like this one. It's like when we did Math Whiteboard. Okay.
Exactly.
This is for a specific group of people. Now, if you're not in the music realm, don't turn off the episode. You might have a friend who's in the music realm.
Share this
you
with
them. You might just be interested. Better yourself right now. Don't just turn off the episode. Okay? Subscribe to us, answer us on Twitter, and then listen to what I'm about to say. So, Flat, okay? This composing tool. Now, Will, you were the one who brought this to our attention. Now, I say that as if like this is new, but basically Will always brings us our tools. Okay, so I don't know what else you want.
Hey, Will, you found us another app, right?
You found us another app. So remind me the context of how this came about. I don't remember.
A professor at your institution, my former institution, teaches music.
That's right.
And uses an iPad to accomplish the task. And projects that up on the screen and kind of shows things, and usually is able to like do some typing or handwriting to kind of demonstrate things, but was looking for a more consistent way to go over music and music composition during class. And so since we knew he could always project his iPad on screen, I was looking for iPad compatible apps. That's where Flat came across my attention, and it's only kind of kept me since then, because yes, he could just use it to write the music notation. That's easy. But it has so many features in it that make it a collaborative tool across students, but also just a good practice and training tool for a student doing things alone. there's features in there that, of course, you can just do the notation, but I believe it has like, I'm not sure how many instruments, but it lets you do like a piano, maybe a guitar. You can actually emulate music through it. So you can write the notation and then play it in different instruments. A lot of really cool features. Not only can you though write stuff in it and it's useful for like the end user or for the student, but if you're like a pro or like, really a musician level user of this tool, you can export the content out to Music XML. You can transcribe it for MIDI devices. Like, it's really useful, I think, not just for a classroom, but for like professional use as a music writer.
Yeah. And they have an education. So a couple of notes about the tool itself. Like the free version, they have a free and a paid version, and the free version provides pretty much all that you need. I mean, the paid version looks like it has like some more score history. If you don't know what we mean by score history, this app might not be for you. But you can create custom instruments in the paid version, which I think is like what, $6.99. It's like $7 a month.
Yeah.
They do have flat for education though. That is looks like you can start for free. And you can do everything from writing composition to, looks like they have like some music theory worksheet type of stuff that you can do. And again, this is a tool that like you've only come to because of like you were helping somebody with an iPad try to use it. I've only been introduced to this tool because of Will in the podcast and looking at it. But based on my understanding, and I've done music classes, I've been involved in that type of stuff. There's a lot of potential in this tool. Like I would love to find a use for it. In my space, I think, not to be confused with the social media platform.
What? Rest in peace.
Yeah, R.I.P. Tom. But it looks like you can actually you can write out music, and there are feedback features in there. It's collaborative, so the best way I think I could put this, and I think my excitement about the use would be, is imagine doing Google Docs, but actually doing it in a tool that's designed to compose music, right? Where you can actually write out music, okay? So you can actually, if we're talking collaborative activities, right? Writing music is not always an individual thing. It's not something you always do by yourself. Maybe our more emo artists here do, but others do it together. I was in a band. We wrote music together. I know when it comes to composing music, you're not always doing it by yourself. There's lots of different stuff. So actually having students work at composing a piece together and being able to use this tool to collaborate and provide each other feedback. The tool allows people to get in there and change and show a history of the changes and do it simultaneously. So it'd be great for work. I think it'd be really helpful if you're doing any type of music education online. This could give you a really good space to both have your students collaborate, but even for yourself, imagine being able to actually have your students write and compose music digitally and be able to provide immediate feedback to them directly in the composition.
Yeah.
All of that stuff I think could be helpful.
Josh and I joke about the hashtag not a sponsor thing, and it's funny and it's true. 100%. We still have no sponsor. Everything we've said to date is just our two opinions on this. But one of the things I want to make sure in saying that real quick before going into this is when I advocate for something related to cost, it's because I feel that there's an ethically clear stance on this. I think that their monthly cost is pretty reasonable. I think that their free for education is also fantastic, but I'm actually a huge fan that they have a lifetime account, right? If you're a musician, I don't know a single musician who loves music and who loves writing who gives it up, right? You never do music ever again. I mean, there could be a tragedy, not be able to play again, but for $150 you can get a lifetime account. And so if you're doing let's say $7 a month for a year, it doesn't take too long before that lifetime account could be really useful for you as a teacher. Could be really useful for your students if you want to support them being musicians long term. So this is something that is not really typical in educational technology. I don't see a lot of lifetime power plans or whatever, or lifetime plans, but I think it's really cool that they do this. And so it may not have all of the features that you get with the premium plus whatever, but for a lifetime account for $150 you get all those export features. You get access to 30 instruments. You can compose online and across your devices. You can compose offline. You can store up to 15 scores at a time, so you'd have to dash some over time if you need to do more than that, but that's a reasonable price And it's not because we want their sponsorship or we're trying to get money out of them ourselves. Like, I think that that's a good thing to be offered. Now, if you don't need to spend the money, or if those education limits are good for you, great. Like, I just think all around this tool is really accessible for educators, for students, for musicians, for people who are just curious and hobbyists trying to pick something up, get better at it.
Yeah. So either way, I recommend go check out Flat. Again, their hashtag not a sponsor. Not that we're not accepting sponsors. If you're listening. But seriously though, I think it's a good tool. We've done enough looking into it that we both would be comfortable trying to implement this somewhere. So I think it has some advantages. So take a look at it. If you do, feel free to let us know how it worked on our Twitter at High Tech Podcast. I almost said .com, but that's not how it works.
Our website isn't even a .com. So
yeah, it's a .us. hightechpod.us. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us in another episode where we talk about the heavy hitters, string cheese, collaborative learning, and music tools. The major things the whole world is worried about.
Trifecta.
I appreciate the trifecta. Appreciate you joining us again for another high-tech episode where we talk about harnessing that technology to enhance our digital and physical classrooms, no matter where you are in the world. So, thank you guys, and see ya.
See ya.